Hey everybody, welcome back to the Latched podcast. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Latched podcast is the podcast for mothers in the trenches of motherhood. Today we're going to talk about periods, because apparently we have never talked about them before on the podcast. Where this will go, what we will talk about, I do not know. But join us for some period discussion.
You're listening to Latched Mama Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Wirt, busy mom of 6 and owner of LatchedMama.com. Join us each week as we talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, postpartum, and all things motherhood.
So this is a fun one. Kennedy actually gave us this topic. I just came running in. We had 4th of July 2 days ago, and then we both had a swim meet last night. I completely forgot we were podcasting, so I'm a half an hour late to said podcast because I was at some practice with the bigs. Whole big thing. But Kennedy looked at us and said, hey guys, talk about periods. And he actually has some pretty great questions for us, or he brought up a couple of great topics, which is really funny, but I don't know. So, periods. Do you remember your first one?
Yeah, it was first day 9th grade.
What?
Yeah.
First day of school?
Yeah, it was terrible. No, I wouldn't say it was terrible, but it was like,
You were not here yet.
Yeah, I was
Were you
here.
in Virginia?
Mm-hmm.
You were at Clover Hill.
Yeah.
First day of school.
Yep.
First day at a new school, or had you went to middle school?
No,
too?
I went to the 8th grade middle school.
So you had
I was
friends.
still here, and I had some friends. But I
You
was
had
also
stuff
like
with
one
you?
of the latest, and I don't know if it had to do with like my athletics.
Sass, were you gymnast at that point, or?
No, I was not a gymnast after 12. Then I got into swimming.
Okay.
But
You're a swimmer. So, did you have stuff with you?
Yes.
Were you still swimming? So did you have to go like straight to tampons, or did you use pads?
So my mom was, I guess still is, a marathon runner. So we never had a pad in the house. So from the get-go, I learned how to use a tampon, let alone an OB.
OB with no applicator.
Oh,
My best friend
so
at the time.
off the bat, I was handed this little thing, and yeah.
My best friend Karen, when I got mine, and those first few years, I was older. I was like 12 or 13.
Okay.
I was at my grandparents' house when I got it for the first time. I remember that. We were at the beach, but I do remember trying to transition and get into the whole tampon thing, and I was with her, and she handed me a tampon, and I had never seen one without an applicator, and I'm like, how, what, hold on, what do you do with this? And I had no idea about the said insertion of said tampon. I had not explored that part of said body yet.
No. And that part of said body, it's so small and hidden.
Uh-huh.
At that age.
At that age, yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm just
It's a little different now.
It's like some greater you can't miss, but yeah. But I'm serious. You're laughing. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
No, absolutely.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And I think about that with Nora, because she has her little bag prepped, and nowadays you have these cool period panties and I hate that word, undies. And so she just carries her bag around, but I don't know.
Yeah, they have swimsuits now too, don't they?
I can't wrap my head around
really
swimsuits,
fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So she's got some undies and stuff in her bag and whatever. But
That's so it's so, and the world has changed. It's wild.
yeah.
Wild. So then we go and then we make babies. So we have our period for a while. What? I don't know. I mean, what?
Yeah.
20 years? 15 years? I don't know. We went from 12. I'm trying to do math in my head to late 20s.
Yeah.
I don't know. Was yours always regular?
No, that's what I was going to ask you if yours was. But I think for most girls at the beginning, I don't know. I don't know what the statistics are, but I think there's a good amount that it's not really regular from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And mine actually has never been regular throughout my life, ever.
Mine has been clockwork, 30-day cycles, my entire life. Well, I mean, I don't remember the early days, but in terms of when I was actually paying attention to it.
Whoa.
And then when we went to go make babies, yeah, clockwork.
And I was
Still clockwork now at 41. Yeah,
I was in there for 35 days to 50 some. Wow. And I don't know why. But
yeah, it's interesting.
so it made it very hard to track anything.
To make babies, that's how you just know you were pregnant with the twins, right? Didn't you say that you hadn't gotten your period, but that wasn't a big deal because you didn't always know when you were going to get your period.
I know that's a tricky one because that was Nelly decided one I nursed the longest.
So you were
For 16 months. And I'm trying to remember back to that, but yeah.
It's so interesting too because we get a lot of questions in the group about postpartum periods and when will it come back, and can you get pregnant nursing, and like all of this stuff that has to do with like learning about your body and learning how it works. And it's so crazy because like without getting into the science of it, everybody's body is different, and I think you make more progesterone earlier probably in life, most people do, than as you get older. So it's really interesting kind of the science of it and what happens. And it's really cute to teach my boys now because like they know like not just like what a period is. Alex is like, there's a lining, a fluffy lining that's built, and then if the egg is not fertilized, then the fluffy lining comes out, and that is the blood. It's just it's so funny how like you have the opportunity to teach, especially when I'm raising 4 boys.
Yeah.
That what exactly is happening out there and stuff like that. But anyways, did you get your period back? Did you have your period for a long time between kids, or did you just go like pregnancy to pregnancy?
No, I do think I got it back. It's just interesting because I think I used birth control before I had Lennox, and then I tried it after, although my body...
What did you use? Do you remember?
I think I used the NuvaRing.
Okay.
Which I really liked, but it's so crazy how your body kind of shifts. And after different kids and as you get older, birth control feels different. So I think combined with kind of some postpartum hormones and things like that, it made me feel terrible. So I did use it for a few months, but then...
After Lennox, before Gabe. Okay.
After Lennox, and then I stopped because I'm like, I can't. I feel horrible on this.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what other option... I don't know. I didn't want to be taking like a pill every day. I don't know. I'm trying to remember back to like what I was thinking and feeling. So I stopped using that. But yeah, then Lennox and Gabe are 18 months apart. Wow. So I don't know.
Yeah. So we didn't use anything. So Eric and I was never on birth control when we first started dating. We just used condoms. And then we got pregnant with Nathan. And then we didn't use anything. And I got pregnant at like, he was still nursing. He still nursed until he was like 3.5, but I got pregnant when he was 10 months old with Alex, still nursing. Apparently I was making enough progesterone. Who the heck knows? But that was the only time. Maybe there was one other time that we didn't lose one in between, like some of the science says that as your period starts to come back, if you're breastfeeding, it takes a little while for your luteal phase to get long enough where that egg can actually get into that, or the lining can get built up enough where the egg kind of has a place to go and like nuzzle up into. So for me, the fact that we weren't using birth control, I think added to the fact that there were a few kind of losses in between because I test early too. So that's the whole thing. It's like my biggest piece of advice is if you're trying to get pregnant while you're breastfeeding, try to wait until till you've missed your period, or like a week after you've missed your period, to save a little bit of heartbreak sometimes. Because I think that you can get some of those early losses while your body's still trying to get back to, the place it needs to be. But in terms of like multiple periods, I think I only had 2, 4, 6. I probably only had 8 in a 11-year period, like 11-year time span.
Okay.
Because I only ever had 1 or 2 between kids before I got pregnant again.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me because now I'm in this whole new world where I get one every month and I'm like emotional roller coaster from hell.
Yeah.
So.
I'm trying to remember how many I had. I do think I had 1 or 2 in between.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was a lot.
But then you didn't get back to monthly periods because of your
after my twins
unfortunate experience.
After my twins had a hysterectomy, which makes it even more difficult. So you talk about tracking, you're talking about your feelings and, what's going on in your brain. And it's really, really difficult. So I still have, because I had that hysterectomy 10 days postpartum. So I was still almost like 3 centimeters dilated, like your immediate postpartum. So she has to be really careful about how much she can take. So I still have apportion a little bit of tissue above that cervix. So what I'm finding is it takes about 3 to 4 months, and I'll have like a little bit, not even like bleeding, but like a little bit every 3 to 4 months.
That's fascinating.
However,
hold on. Are you still releasing an egg? Or is all of that gone? Or the ovaries
all these
gone?
great scientific questions. No, I believe I have both.
Okay.
Just no uterus.
No uterus.
No
Okay.
uterus. And then so I still have this little bit of tissue at the top of my cervix that will... That
So you
thinks
still have
it's-
eggs.
Yeah.
Do they go down the fallopian tube and then they
These
just,
are all great scientific
they
questions.
just
I don't know if they
go
just
away?
get absorbed or... Yeah, I don't know. They have nowhere to go.
Well, it is very interesting too, because I've heard when you have an ectopic pregnancy or you lose a tube, that the other side can come over and do some
Connect?
funky stuff. It's the body is incredible.
That's wild.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. Sort of like the physical signs,
Uh-huh.
but I still have that cycle.
That emotional
Cycle.
So do you
and
think
kind
you're
of
still
that,
like building the progesterone up and the estrogens dropping and all of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean that's not gone away because you still have those ovaries and all
It's
of that.
so interesting.
really,
So
really interesting.
It's really funny. Kennedy's question to us before we
Yeah.
started this was, I mean, I know you're not supposed to point it out to a woman that maybe she's PMSing, but what do you do when you kind of know and they kind of don't, or do you just ignore it, or what's the thing to say? Well, my husband, I think, just realizes that we have 6 kids together and I'm not going anywhere and whatever. I mean, he calls it out. Like I will say, I started my period today, and he will be like, oh, I totally knew that. Like he marks it in his calendar, not when I start my period, but on grumpy days. And then he knows sometimes more than I know, which makes me think that I'm pretty level every other part of the month, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. It was interesting.
know.
Okay, we talked about this a couple months ago. There was that great interview, that podcast that you recommended me to listen to. Do you remember those 2
No.
guys on there?
Oh, Simon Sinek?
And who else was it? There was somebody else.
Uh,
I don't know. But anyway, something literally just popped up, and this is kind of crazy that Kennedy mentioned periods, but it was somebody, and he was like, I don't. He's like, I'll be completely honest. Like, please break this down for me. So
Yeah.
the woman he was interviewing went straight into these 4 phases. And it was really, really interesting because she talks about these certain phases and kind of, you know, there's more drive, there's more like production, there's more energy, there's more creativity. And it was like so interesting. And I'm not going to pretend I know anything about it because I literally just listened to it. But it was quite fascinating. And from a partner standpoint, you can kind of get a little bit of insight into the mind of why maybe your wife or partner is like super driven that week and is not, doesn't want to be touched as much, or then another time does and is really creative and is more nurturing.
So
It is quite fascinating. So that would be pretty neat to have somebody on who maybe knows like a lot, because
so this is like the first time
great.
in my life that I have ever like been mature and adult enough and had a cycle enough to start really picking up on the fact that like I have really, really good weeks, like weeks where everything in life, like you could throw 1.5 million things at me and I would find optimism and excitement and just want to embrace it all. And then I have moments where I am down, don't want to get out of bed. I mean, I do, but every single thing feels like a mountain. And I would like to say that it's because I'm not eating right, or I'm not sleeping right, or there's some sort of external thing. But I'm starting to realize that it's probably not exactly. I think that there are hormones at play. But I think for the first time since I become an adult and have all of these responsibilities, and like, I mean, I was an adult before I had kids, but you know what I'm saying? Like suddenly, like this is my future until I go through menopause, is like I have got to figure out what these things do. And what do you do when you have unproductive days or weeks? You give yourself grace. I don't know. I just bought a new vitamin, and I bought it because of the name. It's like Miss Mellow. I don't know.
Okay.
It had great Amazon
Is it just
reviews.
like support?
Yeah, it's like chastaberry. I don't know. It's a few different things. People are going to probably... I'm not recommending any sort of herbs or supplements because I have no idea, but I'm going to try to do it
Just
again.
a daily?
Yeah, because I watch all of the relationships in my life suffer, every single one of them, for those few days. And I'm just super anxious, and I'm touched out, and I literally can't deal with the constant mom.
Well, we're just so quick. I find it as well. And I do think my awareness is a lot better. And when I find that I am eating or moving my body, I'm a bit clearer in that, in recognizing it. But even if I recognize it, I'm still struggling with it. I'm still either quite emotional over things. And I'm like, okay, but why? Because if I processed this last week or 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't be feeling like this. And then I'm like, okay, this is probably what it is. So it's like great awareness, but it still doesn't change the fact that like in my body and in my brain, like something is going on that's different.
And mine wasn't before my period this cycle. It was during my period this cycle. So then I'm Googling that and I'm saying, well, what does that mean? And does that mean that like something's like wacky and off? And like, it's just so interesting because it's just so complicated. We are complicated. We are complicated individuals. And even Caroline at 7 will look at me and I'll be like, Caroline, what's wrong? Mommy, I don't know what's wrong. I just feel like I need to cry. And I'm like, welcome to being a woman. I can't tell you what it is. She's like, everything was great today, Mom. She's like, but can you just hold me for a second so I can cry? And Eric just kind of looks at me and of course I do, but he just smiles and he shakes his head and he walks away because he's like, oh, women, like it's just what we are and what we deal with. And so we can bring these beautiful little people into the world and add something to life that dudes can't. But holy moly, is it difficult sometimes.
I know, but maybe it's a good one. Maybe we could have like a part 2 to this.
I think
with someone that's a little bit more
in who knows what they're talking about.
Because I think as far as like partner support, and maybe that's what Kennedy is also maybe getting at, is learning more to be able to support and communicate. With
and I mean, because I tell you, because it's not like I can laugh about it now that Eric calls it out, but like in the middle when he calls it out, I want to freaking I don't know what I want to do to him, but it makes me really mad because I'm like, this is not the time or place. Like, I can't control this. I'm sorry that I'm short with you. Like, I'm trying really hard. Like, don't call it out now. I mean, he's gotten a little bit better about it, but I think it's also helpful for him to know that there's probably like, although he can support me, and let's talk about ways he can support me, at the end of the day, we just need to get through this, 5-6 day period. But then it's going to happen again the following month. But maybe Miss Mello will help me out. I literally, if anything, I bought it for the marketing of the name because I was like, I would like to be called Miss Mello. I believe that would be a great title for me if this makes me into Miss Mello.
It goes because what your mom calls you Miss sometimes.
Yeah,
there
Miss Mello. But have you, the other thing that I have seen as I am not trying to have babies anymore, it's been very interesting because my thought process has always been that your progesterone, as you stop breastfeeding and as you breastfeed less, you actually create more of it. So my periods have gotten much heavier as I've been further away from having a baby. I mean, they've always been really manageable. But it's been interesting because I think that supports my scientific study. And if for those of you who want to look it up, Kelly Mom has a really, really great article about how fertility comes back during breastfeeding and after pregnancy. And it has a really cool chart on it about how many women see full fertility and how many cycles they actually need to have before they're back to full fertility after breastfeeding. Because, I mean, I went anywhere from, I think it was 10 months apparently between Nathan and Alex because I got pregnant on our first cycle. But then it was anywhere between a year. After Caroline, I had a cycle back in 8 weeks. She was nursing just as much as everybody else did. So I don't know if it was the fact that I had finally had a girl and there was still estrogen left on my body. It's crazy. But I had cycles from like 6 weeks on with her. But then it went right back when I had Benjamin. It was like another 10 months, 11 months before I had a cycle. It's so weird.
It's got to be so scientific.
It's like fascinating.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I was going to say something and now I forgot.
But yeah, I want to, I'm going to
start. Well, I was going to say, somebody just slacked this as well. And I remember when I went for a postpartum checkup, it was either after 4 or 5 or 6. And he was like, no, that is, you get older, they get longer, they get heavier. He's like, periods? That is just, yes. And why? I'm like, why? And like, it was a postpartum visit, which was probably short. We weren't able to sit there and chat forever. But, I've always wanted to look into that, but I do that that was it for me. And I don't know, you know, those first ones are just so difficult because whether you kind of have leftover things and it's new and your body's getting back to its usual, but that's what I was told. And
It's
from people sharing, it does seem to be the case, but I don't know why.
I don't know. It's just
not fun.
So interesting.
So I'm thankful I don't
Just
have them. But
talk more about it and normalize it. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think just go back to more education, and not just for your partner. And we've talked about it before. There's a lot of women that have no idea.
We have high schoolers in here.
Well, I'm sitting here going
no
like,
idea
I
how
don't.
their cycle works.
Yeah.
No idea like how, you know, the body releases an egg and builds the lining and when it sheds and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll have an expert in and we can talk a little bit more about this, especially kind of in those childbearing years and then forward from there and what to expect and stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed our period conversation.
Yay.
I don't think we moved any mountains today,
No.
but hopefully we normalized some stuff. See you guys next week. Bye.